the 9-month update of Penfield Volunteer Ambulance's coverage of the town of Webster. And Glenn Becker, the president of Penfield Volunteer Ambulance, is here tonight to present that. So, Glenn, if you want to take the podium, and I think, Bridget, are you controlling the multiple slides he has? Just kidding.
First is the cover page, and then this is actually the meat of it. Bridget was kind enough to put this in the same format that you've seen in the prior 2 quarters since we took over providing services throughout the town of Webster. And as you can see there, in East Webster, during the last 3 months of the year, we did 576 calls, came in, and 16 of those were mutual aided because obviously all of our trucks are already out on other calls. And in West Webster, there were 686 calls, and 21 of those were mutual aided, for a total of 1262 and 37. So we covered 97.1% of the calls. I think in total, then, for the entire period, in East Webster, we received 2,017 calls, and in West Webster, we received 1,775, and we've covered just a little under 97% of those. I think it's 96.7%. And then less community engagement during October to year end. People were busy with the holidays, I guess. So we partook in the Webster Christmas parade, and then other than that, it was just business as usual. Folks coming to the loan coverage and CPR classes held both at our own facility, and I didn't even get a count of how many times we went out to either businesses or someone else's facility to provide CPR as well. So, and that's kind of it. Unless you have questions.
I have no questions. There certainly appears to be a consistency in number of calls as we look over the different periods. And you're doing a great job with the percentage of calls responded to. Understanding that if you have 8 rigs on the road and the 9th call comes in, that has to be mutual aided. That's just part of the business.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. And that's why we have mutual aid agreements with neighboring agencies.
yes.
What is the industry standard for aid responding versus mutual aid?
That's a complex question because it depends on different regions of the country that you're in, whether or not you're responding within city, rural, suburban. Penfield and Webster Cross, part of it is qualified as suburban and part of it is qualified as rural. And generally, Melrem's, I believe, is looking for something around 92-93%. That's the Monroe-Livingston County Regional Emergency Medical Services Council. And we try to serve at a higher rate than that. So we tend to staff from a work-life balance or a quality of work-life balance. We like to have our crews have a little more downtime in between calls. So we staff up a little bit higher so that we can reach this percentage. And that means they also have a little bit more downtime to recoup and grab something to eat, maybe take a nap on the overnight shift. So.
Does this CPR class open for the public?
Yes, for
And anyone can sign up?
Yeah, we're on Eventbrite. Just look for Penfield Ambulance residents and folks that work in Penfield and Webster. We provide that at no cost. If they do need a professional rescue card or they need a card, we do pass along what we pay for the card as a charge to the folks.
Okay, great, thank you.
But actually providing the class, which I think in this area is now up around $80 per person. We do that for free.
Because I used to take those classes, that's why.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that question you had, Jennifer, is a great question. I mean, and I've heard you answer so many different ways over the last 4 years. It is not a one size fits all for the call coverage. But it's interesting because where they're covering slightly under 97%, which is above what Milgram has supported. We've had some interesting conversation with our vetting committee that's chaired by Russ Ziskin and by Councilman Cahill, because some of the people on that committee that are EMS professionals that are your comrades, I'll say, Glenn, wondered if that was too high of a coverage rate and if it meant inefficient use of your staff. And you and Dan explained why you do it, which I think made complete sense. One of the things that we haven't been tracking on stats is it seemed as though Penfield Volunteer Ambulance was always in the mutual aid world. The theory, I think, would be is that you scratch my back when I'm out on a call, and you'll scratch my back, or I'll scratch yours when you're on a call. So as the year goes by, one EMS agency, maybe in an abutting town, would have just as many mutual aid calls coming where you cover them as they cover for you. But you have historically been an agency that does several mutual aid calls outside of your coverage area of Penfield and Webster. And that's something that came to, it manifested during when we were researching what to do with EMS back in 2022, 23. That I was always impressed by that is that it seemed like 20% of your overall calls back then were outside of your coverage area. You were helping those other, municipalities and people like that.
Right.
I don't know if you still can do that many outside when now you have all of a sudden gone from 6,000 to 7,000 calls a year between Penfield and mutual aid out, and now you just brought on what's annualized about another 5,000 calls in Webster.
So we did a total, we received calls a little over 11,300.
In
And our overall percentage both for Penfield and Webster is close to that same percentage.
Yeah.
I think it's actually maybe a point worse in the town of Penfield. And so our mutual aid out is very high. I don't have those numbers with me tonight, but it's probably high up, pretty high, pretty close to that percentage again.
Yeah, which I think is an admirable thing for your agency. I know that, leading up to 24, some of the first responders, fire, police, EMS, were concerned that Webster, for how large of a community it is, socioeconomically, how it's a pretty good community, that we seem to be getting more mutual aid calls into our area than our previous EMS agency was doing outside of the area. From what I've gotten over the last 9 months is that the firefighters and the EMS agencies are very happy with what is happening in Webster, is that things have settled down, that they don't have to backfill in Webster because Penfield Volunteer Ambulance is doing a wonderful job.
I also think that, I've not been on the committee with you and Councilman Cahill, but I know that overall in the industry, staffing is very challenging. And I think it speaks to the integrity of your organization that you're able to staff it the way that you do and give downtime and a little better overall health to your employees by staffing it that way and obviously by having percentage of calls responded to. Doing a great job.
Well, it's been a conscious effort to make sure that they've got a good place to be at, and they've got some downtime. It makes a difference in the turnover. So it pays, I think it pays for itself in less training, less turnover, in my mind. So.
That makes sense.
Yes.
It's interesting, I mean, we have a little fluff time here, we're out of schedule, so. We have really the last couple of weeks, since this board, I think it was December 5th, did a resolution to enter into long-term contract negotiations with Penfield Volunteer Ambulance. Really, Glenn, I mean, you and Dan and Councilman Cahill and myself and Russ and Paul Adams, we've had a couple meetings, we're focusing on that long-term. So the short term, which we are coming out of, which was 9 months at this point, I guess, through the end of December, we're halfway through January. What a difference a year makes, because 1 year ago, in January, Councilman Cahill and myself were, I'll say, invited to the Penfield Volunteer Ambulance board meeting, their monthly board meeting, and for good reasons, they were very concerned about what type of investment they were going to make into helping the town of Webster in a short term. And we were very candid with your board at that time. We can't get into a long-term agreement with you right now. Our previous EMS agency had just given a 90-day notice that they were exiting their contract, and we weren't going to make any knee-jerk reactions. And I appreciated your leadership at your board saying, you know, you're looking for us to hire and potentially put more ambulances on. You want us to do that, but you're not ready to make a long-term commitment to us. And those are the type of things that are, you know, hiring, whatever, is a long-term thing. And I think we had a good meeting last January where we were very candid with each other, and, you know, we have to follow this process. We can't make a lazy decision on this. This is for, you know, for a town's EMS, which is a very important function for the long term. And your leadership, I think, appreciated that, and we had a good, it led to our short-term contract that was executed in March. A year later, John Cahill and myself were, I'll say, invited back just 3 nights ago. And that was a very different meeting with your board. Because your board, I think, at that point, it was a much more casual meeting, because what had been said would be done and promises have been carried out in the last year. So it makes it a lot easier. We were just giving them, basically, their board, an update on where Glenn and Dan and John and I were, for lack of better terms, and Paul, in long-term contract negotiations. So, knock on wood. We're hoping that a couple of drafts, I don't mean beers out at the bars, I mean drafts, Kyle, of the contract. Then we're gonna, Kyle, you'll be brought in once we get some layman term drafts, and I think your attorney for Penfield Volunteer Ambulance will be brought in, and then Kyle and your attorney will do their thing. And if all goes well, we had told the Penfield Volunteer Ambulance Board that it could be as early as the February 20th town board meeting to authorize the supervisor to execute that long-term contract. So knock on wood, because I think everybody would like to get this thing put to bed. Any other questions or comments for Glenn?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Awesome.
You hitting the slopes tomorrow?
I will be on the slopes again. I was there today, I was there Tuesday, I'll be there tomorrow.
All right.
Probably over the weekend.
Good for you.
You're the man.
All right, dude. Take
Thanks,
care.
Glenn.